A beautiful aquarium is one of the most satisfying things you can have. At least it is for me. But there are certain rules you can't break if you want to succeed. And even if you've been in the hobby for a while, stick around, because some of these come from my own experiences and, unfortunately, my own mistakes. Who knows, you might just learn something new. Number 1 in our list is mixing the wrong fish. Mixing the wrong fish can turn your peaceful tank into a battleground. Territorial fish, especially of the same species, will constantly fight over space, and that's a recipe for stress, injuries, or worse. And if you're keeping fish that form breeding pairs, you need to think about ratios. A common mistake is getting equal numbers of males and females. That just leads to trouble. Males can be relentless, so a 1:3 male to female ratio helps spread the attention and keep everyone happy. Then there's the issue of fish that see their tank mates as food. Dwarf gouramis and cherry shrimps, for example. Adult shrimp might survive, but those tiny juveniles, a snack. Of course, there are exceptions. I once kept a dwarf gourami with 3 electric blue rams, and not only did they get along, but the gourami actually kept the peace. Every tank is different, and your fish have their own personalities. But if you ignore these rules, you might end up with a chaotic, stressful tank, or worse, missing fish. Buying fish on impulse is one of the fastest ways to turn your peaceful aquarium into a disaster. That beautiful fish you saw at the store might look like the perfect addition, but without research, you're basically rolling the dice on your tank's future. Some fish, like goldfish, might seem harmless until they start eating all your plants. Also, there's this really annoying thing that they do where they start putting a bunch of soil in their mouth and then spit it out. It's a mess. Other fish breed like crazy, and before you know it, your tank is overgrown. Size is another big one. That tiny, adorable fish you just bought, give it a few months, and it might outgrow your tank entirely. And let's talk water parameters. If your setup is soft and acidic, but your new fish needs hard, alkaline water, you're setting it up for failure before it even settles in. Then there's disease. Skipping quarantine and dumping new fish straight into your tank is a great way to introduce parasites or infections that could wipe out your entire stock. Before you buy, take a few minutes to research adult size, diet, behavior, and water needs. It'll save you a lot of stress, and your fish will thank you. But before we move on, if you want beautiful, healthy aquarium plants, check out my shop. All of my plants are grown completely underwater with CO2 and strong lighting. And the shipping though, the shipping is where we shine the most. Every plant you order will be shipped in a small pouch, filled with aquarium water, and covered in thermal bubble wrap to protect it from the elements. If that is something you're interested in, there'll be a link in the description. There are many epiphyte plants in this hobby, from dark green anubias to beautiful mosses, but not every plant is an epiphyte. Now, in this hobby, it's easy to start treating them like they are. Some plants that aren't epiphytes can still be grown like one, especially if you're dosing fertilizers heavily. I mentioned in a previous video that Rotala narrow leaf SP Red can be used this way, and it's true, I've done it, and it grows beautifully. But that doesn't mean every plant will thrive that way. And once you realize some stem plants can work as epiphytes, it's tempting to try it with everything. Experimenting is great. It's one of the best parts of this hobby. But don't go all in. If you want to test a plant as an epiphyte, use a small portion, not an entire batch, or you could lose them all. I've learned that the hard way. Monte Carlo works. Dwarf baby tears, not so much. Some plants just need their roots in the substrate. No shortcuts. One of the easiest ways to keep your water quality in check is to avoid overfeeding. Look, I get it. It's hard not to spoil your fish. They always look hungry. But the truth is, overfeeding leads to all kinds of problems. Cloudy water, algae problems, ammonia spikes. It all starts with uneaten food breaking down and throwing off your tank's balance. A good rule of thumb is to only feed what your fish can finish in a minute or two. And even if you're careful, a little extra food can still slip through. That's where a good cleanup crew comes in. Amano shrimp, corridoras, and other scavengers can help take care of the leftovers before they start rotting. But don't rely on them too much. Keeping portions under control is the best way to avoid problems. I know it's tempting to toss in a little extra, but trust me, less is better when it comes to feeding. Your fish won't starve, and your tank will stay a lot cleaner. Keep it light, and your aquarium will thank you. Alright, since we just covered overfeeding, let's keep it going with another big mistake: overstocking. Surprisingly, both cause the same problems, even if you're feeding the perfect amount. Having too many fish means you're still adding a ton of food to the system. And where does all that food end up? As fish waste. The more fish you have, the more waste builds up in your aquarium. And just like uneaten food eventually breaks down into nutrients, so does fish waste. Depending on your stocking levels, you might be unintentionally dumping a whole batch of fertilizers into your tank, on top of your actual fertilization routine. That's a fast track to algae issues, poor water quality, and stressed out fish. A well-stocked tank isn't just about how many fish you can physically fit, it's about how much waste your system can handle. So if you're dealing with constant water quality issues, take a step back and ask, is my tank overstocked? Because sometimes the best thing you can do for an aquarium is give your fish a little more space. The next rule you should never break is to not introduce fish until your tank is cycled. If you've been in the hobby for a while, you already know this. But when I first started, I had no clue. It took me a while to even understand what cycling a tank meant. And honestly, it's the first thing every fish keeper should learn. Because an uncycled aquarium is a recipe for disaster. Ammonia and nitrite build up fast, and they are lethal. If your tank isn't cycled, you could lose all your fish before you realize what's happening. Cycling takes about 2 to 3 weeks, and is the process where beneficial bacteria establish themselves to convert ammonia into nitrite, then nitrite into nitrate. Without those bacteria, your water stays toxic. That's why patience is key. Rushing to add fish too soon can backfire fast. If you're setting up a new tank, take the time to cycle it properly. Believe me, it's a lot easier than dealing with sudden fish losses and endless water changes. Get that beneficial bacteria going first, and your fish will have a much safer home from day one. This is one of those super basic things, but it's something you absolutely need to know. If you're using tap water in your aquarium, you have to dechlorinate it first. Chlorine is extremely toxic to fish, and most tap water contains it because it's used to kill harmful bacteria. Some water supplies even have chloramine, which doesn't just evaporate like chlorine does. It stays in the water until it's treated. That's why skipping a dechlorinator is a risky move. Even a small amount of untreated tap water can cause stress, gill damage, or worse. Luckily, there are tons of dechlorinators out there, and they are easy to use. Just find one that you like and make sure to add it every time you do a water change. It's such a simple step, but it makes all the difference in keeping your fish safe. Don't take chances. Keep all these aquarium rules in mind. They are all basic, but that's what makes them so important. Let me know in the comments of any of those essential rules that I might have missed.